Margot Beaumont's Cadillac pulled up in front of the main terminal on the island of Saint-Cérise. The heat was intense, and the Caribbean breeze stirred the palm trees, casting dancing shadows over the pale stone floor. As she closed the door, Margot took a deep breath, as if drawing in courage. Inside the terminal, guides, drivers, and tourists crossed paths in chaotic motion. A Quebec Air flight, direct from Lausanne, had just landed. The passengers, tanned or pale, carried in their eyes the hope of escaping the European winter in search of sun, rest, and silence. Margot walked slowly. She didn't want to be there. She had spent the morning in Port Brunel, browsing the shops, trying to convince herself she could simply not go. But it was no use. She was there at the island's airport, waiting for Edward Beaumont. She hadn't seen him in 2 years. And still, she felt that storm inside, anger, anticipation, desire. She thought about pretending she had forgotten the meeting, but she couldn't, and he hadn't shown up. Maybe he'd changed his mind. The Maison Beaumont and Phil's business between Montreux and Lausanne could have kept him. Still, she waited. "Were you looking for me?" The voice came from behind, dry, familiar, sharp. Margot turned slowly. There he was, Edward, the same hard gaze, the same silently commanding presence. The lines on his face were more defined, but his eyes still that glacial shade. "You're late," he said bluntly. "The plane arrived earlier than expected," she replied, trying to stay calm, though her hair, tousled by the wind, betrayed her unease. "Want to get the car?" "Just one suitcase," he said with a faint smile. "You can take it, please." Margot led him to the parking lot. He placed a suitcase in the back seat, took off his jacket and tie, and carefully laid them on top. Then he sat beside her in the front seat, and they left. The silence didn't last long. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "And why are you only showing up now?" She fired back immediately. He chuckled low. "We haven't changed. We think the same thing, say it at the same time, even after everything." She looked away, pretending not to hear. They passed through Falmouth Village, with its colorful wooden houses, and children running at the corners. Margot kept her eyes fixed on the road, steady at the wheel. "I've been on the island for a week," she said, finally. "Why?" "Solange wrote me. Said Henry isn't well. He asked for me. And didn't tell you he wrote to me too?" Margot took a deep breath. "I assumed you knew. And did you come out of duty?" "What are you doing here, Margot? You quit the foundation, left your life in Montreux. What are you hoping for?" "I didn't come for anything. Henry and Solange mean a lot to me, and he's very ill." Edward went silent. Margot felt her words had some effect, but he didn't respond. They passed through Liberta Village. The old stone church stood atop the hill. She drove cautiously, dodging potholes, bikes, and the occasional distracted goat. "You quit your job?" he asked. "Yes." The position was dissolved. "So you're unemployed?" "For now." White clouds drifted across a deep blue sky. The sea appeared ahead, clear, almost ethereal. "Why do you keep sending money?" he pressed. "Because legally, I'm still your wife." "And what does that mean?" "I left." "That's not enough, Margot." She gripped the wheel. The tension rose. "I'm not a child. You don't need to interrogate me." "You could have killed us," he said firmly, as she sped more than she should. "Brake!" he shouted, seeing the curve ahead. Margot yanked the wheel. The tires screeched. The car stopped inches from a tree. She remained still. Then tears began to fall, silent. And then the question slipped out. "Why did you come?" "If I knew you'd be here, I would have left yesterday. Solange should have told me." Edward got out of the car. He walked to the front of the vehicle, calmly surveying the ground. "Call for help," he said. "Someone will pass by soon." Reluctantly, Margot waved down the first car she saw. A local man helped pull the vehicle free. In minutes, they were back on the road. Edward took the wheel. She didn't protest. Silence reigned for the rest of the drive. Atop the cliff, the Villa du Rocher emerged, its white walls glowing gold in the sunset. The wrought iron gate opened slowly, revealing arches draped in bougainvillea and palm trees swaying in the soft breeze. Augustine, The old butler awaited them at the door. Monsieur Edward, Mademoiselle Margot, what a joy to see you both again. Thank you, Augustine. How is everything? Monsieur Henry is eagerly waiting. The house is quiet, but the winds have changed. By the pool, Lucien Beaumont swam lazily. Upon seeing Margot, he surfaced, smiling. You came, he said, approaching. I told Edward you'd care for father, and that he should be grateful. Margot returned the smile, cautiously. Solange insisted I take a break here. Lucien took her hand, with unexpected tenderness. I missed you, he said softly. Shame you married someone so unkind. Before Margot could answer, firm footsteps echoed. Edward appeared, now in swimwear, coming from inside the house. He stopped a few steps away, watching his brother's hand on hers. His eyes said everything. Edward, it's not what you're thinking. Lucien stepped back from Margot, his face flushed. I was only thanking her for being so kind. Oh, of course, Edward smiled, but there was hardness in his voice. The look he gave Margot made her shiver. I'm surprised to find you here, Lucien. Since when does a semester end in February? Excuse me, Margot murmured, standing up. She didn't want to witness that exchange. I have things to do. You two must have much to discuss. But you promised, Lucien said, disappointed. Ignoring him, she tried to pass Edward, but he stepped in front of her, the heat of his bare chest, bronze and firm. Margot clenched her fists, resisting the urge to reach for him. Don't rush off so soon, he said, his voice softer now. It's you I want to speak to, not Lucien. Come swim with me in the bay. Then maybe we can catch some sun on the beach. I can't. I have things to do, she murmured, though the idea was tempting. It would have been so easy to give in. Step into the warm water. Forget everything. Lie next to him beneath the palms. But she didn't. She walked inside the house. In the pale stone corridors, footsteps approached. Solange appeared, coming from the wing where Henry Beaumont usually rested. She wore a light floral dress, graceful still, but worry shadowing her eyes. Henri heard the car. Edward is here, right? Did you pick him up? Her voice, with its light French accent, was soft and full like a dark wine. Generous, spiritual. Solange is the heart of the villa. He's by the pool with Lucien, Margot answered. Oh, no. Solange covered her face in her hands. What on earth is he saying to Lucien? I don't know, and I'd rather not find out. I assumed he'd see his father first. Has he completely lost sensitivity? I wish you had told me he'd arrived today. How? I only learned this morning. His secretary called from Lausanne. He boarded the moment he learned you were here. Solange looked deep into her eyes. What would you have done had you known? I would have left Saint-Cérise. I can't stay with him around. No, Henri wants you here. But why? He never told me. Because you do something none of you else can, Solange said resolute. You read to him. Hemingway, Camus. He says your voice calms him, takes him away. He insisted you come. He knew Edward would show up. And look, here he is. Margot was about to respond when shouting interrupted from outside. Mon Dieu, I must see what's happening. Solange hurried down the corridor. Margot headed to her room in the opposite wing. Upon entering, she froze. Edward's suitcase lay on the armchair. Shirts, shoes, blazer. All his. The room had been invaded. His scent filled the air. Nothing was coincidental. Outside, she saw Edward talking with Solange and Lucien. Her heart thundered. She turned and slipped out the back, crossing the garden toward the cliffs. She reached a hidden cove, removed her dress, adjusted her swimsuit, grabbed the windsurf board, and entered the sea. The wind blew strong. The waves carried her away from the house, from the pain, from the memories, on the secluded sandy strip. She left the board, laid the sail to dry in the sun, and lay down. The heat, the sound of waves, the breeze, all helped clear her mind. But her thoughts persisted. Vivienne Moreau, always between them, daughter of a French magnate, author of essays on women and art. They met at a charity dinner. Margot never forgot the look between them. Lucy, her English friend, once said, everyone believed they'd end up together. They never got engaged, but it was as if they were made for each other. Later, Margot asked Edward, did you almost marry Vivienne? He didn't deny it. He just pulled her close, hungry, silent, as he always did, and she surrendered. But Vivienne returned, always returned. Margot closed her eyes, trying not to remember, until she heard a familiar voice, low and husky. Are you always coming here? She startled. Edward stood there. Wet hair plastered his forehead. The red bordered his side. How did you know where I was? I saw you leave. Decided to follow. I still remember how to sail, don't I? She remembered. How could she forget? First lessons in the Grenadines, the stumbles, the laughter, the kisses. And here we are, he continued, even though you said you had a lot to do. I do. I was on my way out. She stood but stumbled over the sail. Edward caught her by the waist. You okay? Are you pretending? It was you who extended your leg. She tried to pull away but fell. He dived in and pulled her back to the surface. He held her, strong, warm, his skin against hers. The smell of the sea and him. No, Edward, I don't want this. Yes, you do. We both do. It's been too long, far too long. The kiss was inevitable, urgent, filled with anger and longing. His hands traced her body as if it still belonged to his skin. She tried to resist, remember the pain, but desire was stronger. When he finally pulled back, breathless, she tried to steady herself. You never change. You still think you can show up and take it all back. I just reminded you of one thing, he said. We're still husband and wife, and that right is still mine. You ruined everything. Edward, this house, this trip, this moment. He let go. Margot prepared the board. She expected him to insist, but he dove into the sea, swimming away. She watched him, heart clenching. Later, back on the beach, after one final run to the waves, she asked, Are you to see your father now? Yes, but first, I had something more urgent to deal with. And without warning, he kissed her again. Quick, relentless, intense. She nearly fell, but he was already walking away along the sand, leaving her alone, heart pounding, lips tasting of bitter longing. Margot followed Edward in silence. Each step through the villa's corridors echoed in her mind, reviving memories she had tried to bury. Everything looked the same, but she was irreversibly different. His presence still lit her nerves on fire with just a glance. Edward didn't need to speak. A single gesture, the nearness of him, was enough. But was there still love? She didn't know. Staying under the same roof seemed impossible. Pretending indifference would be emotionally unbearable. She needed to leave, and soon. Reaching the main hall, she found Lucien, ready to head out. He wore linen trousers and a dark blue shirt, his hair still damp. Why did you disappear like that? He asked, hurt. You promised you'd help me talk to him. I'm sorry, Margot murmured, lost in a storm of emotions. What did he say? She asked, anxious. Did he fight with you? He barely listened. Told me I could do what I wanted with my life, as long as it didn't fall back on him. Told Solange to shut up, then left. I think he went after you. He did. So, you gave up on the conservatoire. Yes. I'm going back to Lausanne as soon as I get a ticket. But first, I have to pick up the Moreaus at the hotel. They're coming for dinner. The Moreaus? Margot felt a tight knot in her stomach. Yes, Etienne and Vivienne, their visiting father. Then, Margot hesitated, touching Lucien's arm. Wait, just 1 minute. I need to change. Of course, he said with a brief nod. I'll be in the car. She hurried upstairs. From the bathroom came the sound of running water. Edward was already in the shower. Wasting no time, Margot grabbed a light dress, threw it on, picked up her bag, and left the room before he finished. Lucien was waiting in the car, engine running. On the way to Hotel Miramar, Margot rehearsed her goodbye. On the shaded terrace, She found Vera and Charles Langdon. Drawn by their warmth and friendship, she decided to join them aboard their yacht. Vivienne and her father, H.M. Moreau, soon arrived, greeting everyone with poised cordiality. Margot felt a chill when Edward's reaction was cold and calculated, despite Vera's gentle presence. Margot announced she would leave the next day. She explained her need to escape, to break free from the emotional manipulation. Vera, understanding, spoke softly. "You love him," she said, "and that terrifies you." Margot said nothing, her eyes filled with tears. But her silent embrace was answer enough. Aboard the Sylphide, they sailed under an orange sky toward Nevis. Margot helped with small tasks, tried to keep moving, convinced that once aboard, there could be no turning back, until, from the deck, she spotted the blue hull of Henry's yacht. The memory struck like a blade. Had he left for good, or was he simply running from himself? In the days that followed, as the Sylphide drifted farther away, Margot avoided looking back. The escape had begun, but perhaps it had no end. The Sylphide anchored in the wide bay of Gustavia, the capital of St. Barthélemy. Margot, along with Vera, Charles, and John Langdon, stepped off the yacht in a Zodiac to explore the island. The terracotta rooftop shimmered under the midday sun, standing out against the lush green hills around the harbor. The air carried an intoxicating blend of sea salt, light yacht fuel, French perfume, and the glint of crystal shop fronts. Smiling guards chatted in the island's melodic accent, and only European cars moved through the narrow streets. After a light seaside lunch, Vera and Margot rented a car to explore more of the island while the men handled the shopping. They drove up winding roads lined with blooming gardens and quiet villages. In Gustavia, they saw women weaving straw hats and children peeking curiously from windows. Later, at the beach, they swam under the shade of palm trees before returning to the meeting point. Margot admired the view of the harbor when Vera said, "I see another blue yacht anchored near ours." "The Blue Falcon?" Margot asked. "Yes," Vera replied. Margot's heart raced. A coincidence, or was Edward following her? The next morning, as she went to pick up fresh bread with John, Charles's brother, Margot found Edward on the dock staircase. He took off his sunglasses. "Hello, Margot." "Oh, are you?" John asked. Edward Beaumont, of the Blue Falcon. The heat wrapped around her. The sound of his voice alone was enough. They chatted briefly with John, and then Edward left. Back on the yacht, Vera asked, "So, just hello, and you replied?" "Nothing," Margot said, slicing pineapple. She thought about leaving. Charles explained, if Edward showed up at Pine Bay, she'd have to leave the Sylphide. During the crossing, Margot saw the Blue Falcon approaching. Vera handed her the binoculars. Reluctantly, Margot took them. The yacht moved with grace. Edward wasn't just following her. He was a man who still haunted her thoughts. At Pine Bay, a paradise ringed with palm trees and white sand, Margot snorkeled among the corals, then rested in the shade. As the sun set, silence fell over the bay. Margot saw the lone silhouette of the Blue Falcon in the distance. He was waiting. A small boat approached. Edward rowed with calm purpose. He jumped onto the beach. "I was waiting for you," he said. "Ready to come aboard?" "Yes," she answered with quiet resolve. "On board," he explained. "I want you to come back with me to Isle de Saint-Cérise. Pretend our separation hasn't happened, just for a few days." She remained silent. "There's no need to worry about intimacy. Just be with me. Nothing more." Margot entered the cabin. She made hamburgers with whatever was in the fridge, then returned to the deck and served Edward. The Blue Falcon sliced through the sea, heading toward the island. Edward held the wheel. The sky darkened, and the moon lit the ocean in liquid silver. "All right," Margot said, looking at him. "I'll stay with you on Isle de Saint-Cérise for a few days." "Thank you," he replied, lifting his glass. Silence fell between them. The sails were full. The night was warm. The sea still. Margot looked at him once more. The decision was made, but the future was still a mystery. The port dock at Saint-Cérise was bustling that morning. Crews loaded supplies, garbage bags, oil cans. Foreign flags fluttered on the yacht masts. The varnished hull of the Blue Falcon gleamed under the intense sun. Edward was speaking with Jonas, the young man in charge of the yacht's upkeep. Then he walked away with firm steps. Margot followed, trying to keep up. It had only been 4 days since she left this place, swearing never to return. And yet, there she was again beside him. As he turned onto the hotel terrace, a figure appeared in front of him. Vivienne Moreau, blonde, elegant, wearing a pink dress with a tropical print. When she saw them together, her eyes narrowed. "Edward, darling," Vivienne said, kissing his cheek. "When did you get back? I was surprised to hear you sailed alone. We could have gone together." Only then did she notice Margot. "Margot, I thought you'd left with your friends. Lucien said you were going back to Montreux." "Lucien isn't always reliable," Edward cut in dryly. Then he gently pulled Margot closer with his arm. "Margot and I ran into each other. We've just arrived." Vivienne fell silent, surprised. "Let's have coffee before heading home," Edward said, looking at Margot with tenderness. She nodded. They sat in a discreet corner of the terrace. A waitress approached, but Vivienne followed, seating herself at their table with authority. "Bring me a coffee," she ordered. "I'm relieved you're back. Edward, your father refused to discuss business without you." She pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit one, nervously. "But I wasn't really needed," Edward replied, coldly. Vivienne paled, letting out a nervous laugh. "I love when you pretend to be indifferent. I met a retired Navy officer, an amateur archaeologist. He told me about discoveries here." She went on and on, ignoring Margot entirely. Edward, unmoved, gave Margot a sly look and winked. Then, suddenly, he interrupted. "Shut up, Vivienne." She froze. "What did you say?" "I said, shut up. I don't have the patience for this right now." Vivienne, stunned, tried to hold her composure. "I got carried away. It only happens with you, darling." She turned to Margot, sarcastically. "So you two got back together?" "Yes," Edward said curtly. "And this woman never speaks? How boring." Margot took his arm calmly. "I'm done running. We're together, and we'll stay that way, right?" "No doubt, darling," Edward said firmly. Vivienne stood up, furious. "I'll tell Daddy you're back." "I'll speak with him," Edward said, standing to pay the bill. "I'll get the car." Margot remained, jealousy still burning. Was it all just theater? Or was it real? Edward returned, and with him, H.M. Moreau. Tall, gray-haired, impenetrable eyes. "Margot, this is H.M. Moreau." "Pleasure," she said, trying to remain composed. "Goodbye," he replied coldly. In the car, Edward sighed in relief. "We passed the test. Thanks for staying calm." The Jaguar followed the coastal road. David, Henry's nephew, was driving. "I called Solange," Edward said. "She's relieved. She said father is with Lyndon Barry, the English journalist." Margot stiffened. "Lyndon Barry?" Edward nodded. "You know him?" "Yes, at Villa du Rocher." Solange greeted them with a warm smile. "So good to see you together." "Margot, dear, come, I'll show you your room." "Thank you," she replied. "I just need a quick shower." Edward smiled. "And my father?" "He's with Lyndon in the garden. Try not to pressure him." Margot went upstairs, bathed, and changed into a soft green cotton dress. As she came down, she noticed canaries in their cages, restless. "It's going to rain," Solange said. "I'll be brief with Henry," Margot promised. In the garden, she found Henry resting. A hat covered his face, a light linen shirt. He smiled when he saw her. "You came back, dear. I'm glad. So am I, Monsieur Beaumont." "I'd like to introduce Lyndon Barry," he said, gesturing toward the young man nearby. Margot froze. "Margot," Lyndon said, surprised. "You two know each other?" Edward asked, tense. "Yes," Lyndon hesitated. "I knew she was married, but not to you. At work, I always use my maiden name, Margot explained. Henry observed silently. The tension was palpable. We finished the interview. I'll be back tomorrow for the photos. Lyndon said, try to compose himself. Edward offered him a ride. Later, Henry commented, you didn't tell him about Edward? I was afraid they'd think I got the job through influence. You were right, Henry said, but I heard you're divorcing. Margot didn't reply. Henry looked at her, serious. That won't come from you, right? No, she answered sincerely. Let's rest, Henry said. The storm's coming. It makes everyone nervous. She nodded. Augustine appeared. Edward went to St. John. Said he'd be back soon. If anyone calls, I'll be in my room, Margot said, heading upstairs. Outside, the sky was darkening, and in her heart, everything was about to begin again. Margot lay still, watching the ballet of light and shadow dance across the ceiling, reflected from the illuminated pool below. Questions came in waves. Why had Edward gone to St. John? Was he with Vivienne? Was the scene on the terrace real, or just an act? The way he treated Vivienne, cold, sharp, had it been genuine, or was it calculated? She turned restlessly in bed, wishing she could simply switch everything off, as if flipping a channel. But the past still throbbed within her, alive in every cell. She closed her eyes and fell into a fragmented sleep. A gentle knock on the door woke her. It was Augustine, the butler, with a discreet message. There's a call for you, ma'am. Mr. Lyndon Barry. She dressed in a turquoise blue dress, fresh and elegant, pinned up her hair lightly, then descended to the waiting jeep that drove her to the hotel. The night was heavy, the heat oppressive. The clouded sky seemed to promise a storm. On the hotel terrace by the pool, Lyndon stood waiting, serene in linen trousers and a light shirt. A small orchestra tuned their instruments. Soft lights shimmered on the water, a perfect setting for a reunion full of questions. I didn't know you were here, he said, breaking the silence. I called your apartment. Went to your office. No one knew where you were. Margot nodded. Her tone was calm, restrained. I didn't want to leave any traces. I just needed to vanish for a few days, to escape everything. Or someone, he suggested. She didn't answer, merely looked away. Rumors are circulating in Lausanne, he continued. They talk of divorce, reconciliation, even your maiden name, scattered fragments of the truth. I've never wanted it to seem like I depended on the Beaumont name, she replied softly. I insisted on keeping my name, my independence. He nodded, disappointed. And yet, I always wanted to be more than just a friend. Margot sighed. She looked up at the dark sky. Do you think it'll rain? Or pour, he said with a sad smile. And rain it did. Suddenly, guests rushed inside. Dinner was moved under a covered area, with softer music. At a quieter table, the conversation took a new turn. Lyndon revealed the source of the rumors, a tall, blonde woman. Margot didn't need to ask. She only whispered, Vivienne. She spreads insinuations. It seems she'll do anything to separate you from Edward. She's always been like that. Never needed to speak. Just take up space. She's very good at it. He watched her carefully. What's left between you and him? Margot paused before answering. No pressure. Just the end of a distance that lasted far too long. Lyndon lowered his gaze. I thought you'd left. That's why I came here. But now I see he still holds a place in your heart. Margot said nothing, but her eyes answered everything. She bade him a gentle farewell and walked back alone. The clouds cleared gradually, revealing the full moon. When she reached the house, Augustine was waiting. Mr. Edward went rowing, he said, even though the sea is rough. She went upstairs, leaving her bag on a chair, but something stirred within her. She stepped outside onto the moonlit beach, guided by instinct toward the boathouse. He was there. The sea is dangerous tonight, she said. I needed this. Time to myself. She approached and touched his arm. Why don't you ever invite me? I thought you would want to. She said nothing. The night breeze enveloped them. Waves crashed softly in the background. I had dinner with Lyndon, she said, meeting his gaze, before someone mentions it. Edward didn't react. He only stared at her, expression unreadable. And what did he want? To know if I'm still married and if I plan to remain so. A heavy silence fell. She stepped back. He held her hand. Don't go. She turned. His eyes were fixed on hers. And then the kiss. It was urgent, deep, filled with anger, longing, and repressed desire. On the wet sand beneath the moonlight, she surrendered. Every touch seemed to awaken forgotten memories. Their bodies reached for each other with hunger, with tenderness. Afterwards, in silence, they composed themselves. You don't have to stay in my room, he said softly. You can sleep wherever you like. Just stay. Margot nodded wordlessly, exhausted, her body still, her soul ablaze. Back inside the house, her eyes landed on the chair next to the door. She didn't even recall where she'd left her bag. She felt restless. If you need me, Edward murmured, stopping nearby. She gave a slight nod and walked silently upstairs. He stepped away down the corridor. Margot climbed alone. But inside, everything had changed. The fire, that old intimate flame, was burning once again. Margot spent the night alone, restless. Sleep only came at dawn, heavy, broken, unsatisfying. When she finally woke, close to 10, something fell off in the room. The closet doors were open. A shirt lay tossed over the armchair. A damp towel in the bathroom. The mirror still fogged. He had been there, perhaps at sunrise, and now gone again, without a word. She took a quick shower, dressed in white shorts and a navy blue t-shirt. Curiously, the clothes weren't in her suitcase. It unsettled her. Was she truly planning to leave, or was it just another way to resist what she felt? She went downstairs, circling the pool toward the breakfast room. The setting was serene. Blue sky, crimson flowers, birds singing. A table set for one. Augustine greeted her gently, informing that her handbag had been found and delivered to Mr. Edward that morning. He'd left early with his father. Margot simply nodded. After breakfast, she headed to the main suite. Solange welcomed her warmly and shared that Edward had just left, perhaps to meet Vivienne in town. The idea hit like a blade, but Margot masked it. She wouldn't ask. Soon after, Henry Beaumont called her to the courtyard. They walked slowly through the rose garden. He was calm as always, she consumed by doubts. I heard you spoke with that journalist, he said after a long silence, and that you found the source of the rumors. Yes, a blonde woman, tall, staying at the hotel, claimed to be a family friend. Vivienne Moreau, he confirmed, Etienne's daughter, not to be trusted. Margot sighed. She also confessed she'd felt watched, monitored, even during the legal separation, as if her every move had been anticipated. Henry didn't deny it. In a way, it was Edward wanted to ensure you had time, space, and reason to reconsider. He influenced a few things, including the cancellation of your position at the foundation. It was part of the plan. Margot stopped. The ground seemed to shift beneath her. A plan, she whispered, wounded, to bring you back. Here. To him, Henry said simply, it mattered that you were here. She remained silent. He continued, I know my son isn't easy, but I believe you never loved him for money. And he knows that too. His words moved her, yet left her conflicted. She promised to stay until the end of the week. Then she'd decide. Later that day, with calm seas and steady wind, Margot went windsurfing. The physical effort cleared her thoughts. But returning, exhausted, she found a woman in a blue dress blocking her path among the rocks. Vivienne. Well, still here, the blonde said with a cold smile. Margot didn't answer. Tried to pass. Vivienne persisted. How long will you wait for him? Until you're done pretending you don't care. That sharp tone. The veiled threat. Margot inhaled deeply, but didn't retreat. I'm not here to fight, she said firmly, but I won't tolerate provocation. Have you always been this way? Resilient? Or just resigned? And then it all happened fast. A misstep, a shove, a stumble, a fall, and then darkness. When she opened her eyes, She was lying in bed, her eyelids heavy, her head pounding. Blurry figures came and went. Indistinct sounds. His voice reached her in a whisper. "Don't try to move. The doctor's on the way." She tried to speak, murmured. "Vivienne, she was there." Edward responded cautiously. "She left this morning. Maybe it was a dream, or a fever." The doctor arrived. No fractures, just bruises, exhaustion. She refused the hospital. She wanted to stay. Edward promised to take care of everything. Solange offered her support too. In the following days, Margot recovered slowly. A week passed. Edward was almost always there, reading her passages from a novel, bringing messages, keeping a respectful distance, yet present. She tried in vain to bring up the topic. Vivienne, the fall, the push. He listened, then deflected. "Rest," he'd say. "You're still too sensitive. Don't dwell on it now." She realized he wanted to protect her, but also to avoid the truth. One day, as she finally managed to get up, she called him from the balcony. No answer. Solange appeared, sweet as always. "Edward left early this morning. He's gone to Lausanne. Business. But he didn't say goodbye. He said you'd understand, that he didn't want to delay the inevitable." Margot returned to the room. The bed was made, her bag on the chair, everything in place. The silence in the house felt deeper, more real. She was alone. The pact had finally dissolved. He was gone, and she was free. Free to choose. Free to decide whether to follow that man, or turn the page. For the first time in a long while, she was at peace with the uncertainty. A week later, Margot left out to Saint-Cérise, in silence. She turned down Solange and Henry's pleas to stay a few more days, to fully recover. She needed distance. She needed a fresh start. At the Montreux airport, no one was waiting for her, which made sense. No one even knew she was coming. From the arrivals hall, she called Lucy, the friend she'd once shared a tiny apartment with. Before the trip, Lucy was still getting ready for work, and the moment she recognized Margot's voice, she let out a surprised, joyful laugh. Margot still had the key. Lucy confirmed she could come back anytime. "Talk to you tonight. I'm heading out," Lucy said cheerfully before hanging up, tired from the long journey. Margot took the train, then the metro, dragging her bags through it all. Nearly 2 hours later, she stepped into the apartment. Everything was exactly how she left it, but it felt like a different life, as if she'd returned from some lost world in time. How could she have been gone so briefly, and yet feel like a decade had passed? Without unpacking, she collapsed on the couch, slept nearly the entire day. That evening, she made something light to eat and called her parents in Epping. She spoke little, didn't mention Edward or what they'd gone through, certainly not what she still felt. She didn't want questions, didn't want explanations. Lucy was her next call. Margot spoke of the islands, the beaches, the people, but never once mentioned Saint-Cérise or Vivienne. The next morning, a phone call woke her. "Margot, it was Lindenberry. Would you consider coming back to the foundation?" She hesitated, asked about the budget cuts. He answered plainly. They didn't work out. Margot understood immediately. That offer had a name behind it. Henry or Edward? She hung up with a vague promise to think it over. That weekend, she visited her parents in Epping. No direct questions. The house was busy, preparations underway for the grandson's baptism. She helped her mother in the kitchen, walked with her father through forest trails, went to the market for flowers. That peaceful routine brought relief. Back in Montreux, she realized she hadn't even told Vera about Madame Vivienne. But now all of it, the island, the kisses, the pain, felt like a distant dream. Like Saint-Cérise had only ever existed, in memories faded by sea salt. She reached the building. Music, voices. She turned the key, and Lucy opened the door. "You have a visitor," Lucy said, her eyes sparkling. Margot's heart raced. "Edward?" Lucy nodded. "He's been here since this afternoon. Said he'd wait for you, however long it took." Margot stepped back. I don't want to see him. Oh, yes, you will. He crossed a continent for you. The least you can do is hear him out. Before Margot could argue, Lucy vanished down the hallway. Edward stood up, poised, composed. That same look, the one that always disarmed her. Margot's knees went weak. She wanted to run, but he stepped forward, took her hand. You look exhausted, he said gently. Can I get you something? She didn't answer. He offered brandy. Strictly medicinal, he joked. They started talking, or rather, arguing. Margot accused. You left. Again. No warning. Edward, calm. I thought that's what you wanted. You pushed me away. The conversation deepened. Vivienne, the beach, the fall. Then Edward broke the silence with the truth. He had confronted Vivienne in Lausanne. She'd flinched, mentioning windsurfing details she could never have known. Pressed, she finally admitted it wasn't an accident. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted to know how you felt. And you seemed so distant. I was scared. But I did care. Margot cried, eyes filling. You're leaving? It shattered me. Silence. Then, with a steady voice, Edward revealed more. He decided to sell his share of the family maison. He wanted to start something of his own. Smaller, lighter, but fully his. And more than anything, he'd done it all to be free. Free. To be with her. I never stopped loving you, he murmured. I just didn't know how to show it anymore. She listened. No more defenses. Only truth. Then why did you wait so long? Because I thought it had to come from you. But when I heard you'd contacted a lawyer, I fear it was too late. I wanted a reaction. I thought you forgot me. He held her. The kiss came. Inevitable. A reunion of everything they repressed, denied and buried. This time, no holding back. The next morning, still in robes, seated at the table, Edward surprised her. Let's live part of the year in Saint-Cérise, part in Lausanne, and part here. We're not millionaires. We're enough, and we'll build more. I don't care how much. I care about you, and what we'll build together. She laughed, told him she loved him, said she wouldn't run anymore. And what about work? She asked, touching her cup. He smiled. Lyndon's call was just a push. I asked him to do it. So you orchestrated everything? I did what I had to reach you. Margot hesitated, but looking into his eyes, she saw it all. Protection, truth, love. She kissed him gently, without fear, without hesitation. This time, there would be no more goodbyes. Their love was finally a choice, and it was forever.